teaching to our kids in schools these black savages are our equals. They're our brothers and sisters. I tell them they're crazy. We're white people. We'll stand up for our white rights. The Klan is the only organization that stands up for the white rights.
I believe that the KKK people were an irrational group that thought that their actions were being based on a biblical viewpoint, but rather it was an inhumane act that they were committing towards people that did nothing to them, people that were, innocent civilians that were just about doing their everyday life.
The 1920s was in many ways a reactionary period in American history. For instance, the decade saw the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan in a new and improved form, and by improved, it meant much more worse than it ever was before.
Started the Ku Klux Klan. Its purpose was not to kill blacks. Its purpose was to take control and return Democrats to power. Their stated purpose in the KKK was to stop Republicans and restore Democratic control.
Well, looking at the Ku Klux Klan, also known as the KKK, they were composed and still are of white Anglo-Saxon Christian American citizens, which included both male and female. The KKK had a strong belief that their race and religion are superior to those of people of other color and religion. The KKK had mostly targeted and attacked African Americans in the past due to the freeing of slaves by Abraham Lincoln, which was during the Civil War. When the white Southerns heard that the blacks were now free, they were very furious and took out their frustrations on freed blacks. It was therefore at that time, just after the end of the Civil War, that before the states that the Ku Klux Klan was formed by ex-Confederate soldiers.
The KKK are a far-right organization which were formed in the United States. It was founded in 1866 by a group of Confederate soldiers named John Calvin Jones, Franklin McCord, John B. Kennedy, John C. Lester, James R. Crow, Richard R. Reed. One of these founders who later became chosen as a leader was Nathan Bedford Forrest. They tended to base their beliefs on white supremacy, white nationalism, and anti-immigration. KKK was created to scare and threaten black and white Republicans and terrorize many blacks throughout the South. 10% of black legislators who were elected were victims and 7 were killed.
New Orleans Republican Convention, they killed 40 blacks, killed 20 whites, they wounded 150 others. In 1868, they put out a push card in South Carolina, and it listed what they called the radical members of the South Carolina legislature. That push card's about the size of a baseball card. It was put up by the Klan. Klan put it out. It had the pictures of 63 legislators that needed to be wiped out in South Carolina. 50 of those legislators were black.
The KKK re-emerged in 1915 after the movie Birth of Nation, which portrayed Klan members as a group of brave white heroes who gallantly saved whites from aggressive blacks in the early 20th century.
Targets were now blacks, Roman Catholics, Jews, foreigners, and organized laborers. At its peak in the 1920s, it had over 4 million followers. Throughout the 1920s, the KKK imposed their view on a large number of American citizens through lynching, whipping, shooting, beating, raping, and drugging minorities and terrorizing colored schools and churches.
In the 1920s, African Americans were roaring their culture. Since now African Americans were free, they were able to accomplish their dreams. African Americans were now interested in music, literature, art, and their social commentary opened up in Harlem, New York. The white Protestants saw this as the black Americans were now going to take over the United States, and this just made them furious. And also, with many more immigrants coming from Southern and Eastern Europe, which were mostly Catholics and Jewish, many white Protestants were more and more concerned about losing their dominant position in their social order.
The KKK had a large political influence due to its large amount of followers. Its support was strong in many states throughout the United States, which led to them influencing the strict quotas on immigration, such as the Immigration Law of 1924. Many politicians in the United States were members of the Ku Klux Klan, such as Chief Justice Hugo L. Black, Edward Jackson, and Rex W. Meade.
The KKK during the 1920s had a major impact in that decade simply because the KKK had like a huge amount of followers, meaning that politicians were following the KKK, they were members of the KKK, which affected many laws that were.
I think like during the 1920s, the KKK, there were like many white Protestants. Why do you think it reached like 3 million followers?
It reached 3 million because there was a large amount of immigration. So many Americans were against immigration because they didn't want immigrants from other countries coming into their country. They felt like they were attacked. They felt like how many people feel today. They felt that immigrants were taking their jobs and that they were just like living off the government. And that just made them join the KKK because they knew that the KKK was against immigrants. And although many African Americans weren't immigrants, they were just hated against. They were hated against because of the color of their skin, because they were seen as inferior, and that was something that was brought from the 1800s.
The 1920s was a life-changing for many African Americans because around this year, many African Americans were accomplishing their dreams. They were trying out things that they never got to try before because now they had freedoms to do so. Things such as jazz music, literature, art, and dance was being adopted in the 1920s, and this became very famous. As a result, many white Protestants were very furious when they heard that African Americans were accomplishing such thing, and many immigrants were coming from another nation in order to see this prosperity that was going on by African Americans. The white Protestants felt like that the African Americans and those new immigrants were taking over America, and they felt like America was an